Hey everyone, I'm Patrick, and today we're going to look at Sukhasana easy seat. Sukhasana is a seated pose, and it's often done at the beginning of class to start with an intention, to start with a focal point before the class even begins, but it's also one of the main seats for a meditation practice or a pranayama or breathing practice. The pose easy seat stretches the ankles, the knees, and the outer hips, as well as the spine, the low back specifically. And it also strengthens the outer hips, the muscles of the outer hips that stabilize the seat. It also strengthens the abdominal muscles and the spinal extensors, because the abdominal muscles and the spinal extensors help us keep our spine upright so that we can sit nice and tall in easy seat. So let's look at how to actually do the pose. I'm going to start seated with my legs in front of me in a shape called Dandasana or staff pose. This is probably the most common way in which to start easy seat. So with my legs in front of me, I'm going to simply cross my legs at my shins. This is important because if I cross at my ankles, if I cross higher up at my knees, I will not have the symmetry between both legs. So once you cross directly in the middle of the shins, you can let your knees relax out to the sides and rest on the feet. Once that happens, just take a look at the fronts of your shins and they should be parallel to the front of your mat. So this is the lower half of the shape. Once my legs are relaxed in this position, the next part of the shape is about lifting and lengthening the spine. And this is what's often challenging for a lot of students. So I'm going to use my hands just to help me assist. I'm going to press my fingers down into the floor or on your yoga mat and lift the chest up, so that from my hips to my armpits, I'm getting length in the sides of my trunk. My collarbones are spreading. Once I get the extension through my spine and my legs still stay relaxed, well then I can make sure my eyes are at about eye level and I can rest my hands somewhere on my thighs or at the center of my chest. And here's easy seat Sukhasana. So now we're going to look at a few common mistakes when people come into easy seat. The first one is simply crossing the legs at a position that is either not symmetrical, and that means either low at the ankles or too high at the knees. And you can see here that my shins are crossed in the middle and I have a symmetrical shape to the seat. But quite often students cross at the ankles, and if you cross at the ankles like this, you can see how the seat becomes unbalanced. And if we're sitting in easy seat, as we already identified the purpose, either to start a yoga class or to start a meditation practice or a breathing practice, we want our body to be in symmetry so that we can focus on the breath or focus on the meditation at hand. So it's very, very important to make sure that when we cross the legs, they're crossed at the middle of the shins, and that allows the legs to fully relax. The second common mistake that we often see in easy seat is not necessarily a mistake, but is due to tightness in a student's body. And when this happens, the pose doesn't look so easy. So this common mistake is simply not using a yoga prop when one is needed. And the yoga prop that's typically needed for easy seat is sitting up on something. And the way to identify this for yourself is if you come to sit in easy seat, Sukhasana, when you cross at your shins, your knees are lifted up higher than your hip creases. And this is just because my outer hips are tight, my hamstrings are tight, my knees might be tight, and it's hard for me to lift and expand my spine when my lower body is so stiff. So if you're come to sit in easy seat and it looks like this, where your knees are much higher than your hip creases, well, then you know you need to modify or adjust. So now let's go ahead and look at some quick modifications or the use of props to make easy seat truly feel easy. The first one is a simple one, sitting up. And I'm gonna sit up on a block. This is a common yoga prop that you might find at a yoga studio. You can even find probably yoga blocks at your local supermarket or health store. This is just a great use of a yoga prop to lift the hips up so that my legs can relax and my spine can extend. I'm gonna take this yoga block, I'm gonna lay it flat. I'm gonna put it down, just like that. And now I'm gonna sit on it. So for the student who makes this common mistake that, well, their body is just too tight or they're crossing at the ankles instead of the middle of the shins, lifting up the hips now gives us more space to allow the legs to relax. So I'll cross the middle of my shins, I'll let my legs relax down, and now you can see that my knees are just slightly lower than my hip creases. This is excellent because now my legs can relax and then I can truly focus on lifting my spine once my legs are relaxed. Once all that happens, I can bring my hands to a position on my thighs so that my chest is lifted and my legs are relaxed. The next prop setup for easy seat is really what I like to say is like the souped up version. We're gonna use a bolster and a blanket. The bolster is gonna help elevate our hips, which we know is important if we want our legs to relax and our spine to lengthen. And then I'm gonna roll up a blanket and I'm gonna use that to support my ankles and my shins, because quite honestly, if your ankles and shins are tight, to let the weight of your legs rest there, it might be uncomfortable. And then once again, it doesn't really become easy seat if it's not so easy. So let's take a look at that. First, we're gonna take our blanket and we're gonna roll it up into this log shape, just like this. And I'm gonna put it long ways. And then I'm gonna take my bolster and set that up to sit on it. Once I have that, I'm just gonna pull the blanket all the way close so it's perpendicular to the bolster. And if you don't have a bolster and a blanket, you can sit up on your block and still use this rolled blanket. So it doesn't really matter what you sit on, but I find it the most comfortable to have a bolster and a blanket. So here we are, Dandasana, staff pose, legs extended. And now I'm gonna cross at the middle of my shins over this perpendicular blanket. And then I can let my legs relax. And now you might notice that my shins and my ankles are not getting squished into my yoga mat. So my legs can fully relax, my ankles can fully relax, my shins can fully relax. And because I have this great support of the bolster, I can take my hands behind me, press down, lift my chest, spread my collarbones, and then I try my best to maintain that. And now the seat does feel easy. It feels relaxed, but also light and supported at the same time. So there you have it, easy seat, Sukhasana. We'll see you in the next pose.